Hello.
Hello. Hi, Margaret. Is everybody all right? Sandra, you okay?
I'm fine, thank you. Yeah.
Cool. So we're revisiting things that we've done before, but with a different concentration technique. I'm hoping everybody got the email so that you have had the opportunity to draw yourself. Brilliant. So some of you will have one of these from previous classes. But if you haven't got one, then essentially grab yourself a black biro, a felt tip pen, anything at all, and draw a circle on a little bit of paper. And that circle only needs to be about the size of your thumbnail. It doesn't need to be anything bigger than that. And then we'll use that as our concentration technique. In fact, your circle can be any size, really. I mean, don't go for head size. I would say that would be, but maybe thumb, big toe, that kind of size will do the job. So whilst other people are just hunting out bits of paper and having a quick draw, don't rush. It's absolutely fine. I'll show you what we're going to do first off. So today's session is to revisit some of our old favourites, but also, like I say, to add that concentration technique in. So the first thing to do is to put yourself lying down on your back with the blanket folded up underneath your upper back, so that you've got something. It's roughly, I'm just trying to think, it's kind of maybe an inch underneath your armpit sort of height across your back. It's where the point of your shoulder blades are. So wherever this kind of point of your shoulder blade, you can have a feel about for it and notice roughly where it is. And it might be that you quite like the idea of something more narrow. So if I hold this up, to me, you can see it goes from my waist to the bottom of that pointy bit of shoulder blade. Now you could lie on something that narrow, or you could lie on something that's wider so that it comes into your lower back, okay, so that it's just into the lower back. Either is fine, it's absolutely a preference. Then the other thing to consider is how many layers that you want. You might use one. So it's not very thick, but it still gives you this wonderful back bend. You could put both of them. What you want to be doing is having what I'm going to call as the firm fold, where all of the folds are. That's the bit that comes up nearer to your head, and the stepped part is lower down. So if I just wiggle into this so you can see that you've got quite a bit of your upper back and your shoulders resting. Then you've got the firm fold at the tip of your shoulder blades. It allows you to have your arms out at shoulder height, like at angel arms. And if you look at the curve in my back, my shoulder joint is at the same height as my ball and socket and pelvis, and my back curves up and down. If I come off this slightly wrong, you'll then see that totally different shape with where my shoulder and my pelvis is, and that everything is a bit level. So whilst actually this isn't uncomfy, it's not giving you that little back bend that becomes the wonderful counter pose to the fact that most of the time tend to sit a bit like this, and that we've got that forward bending in our back all of the time, and it's lovely to spend just a small amount of time. We'll be here for about 10 minutes, lying on your back. Have your knees bent, feet flat to the floor, and your knees strapped. So tie your knees together. If you haven't got anything handy and you'd rather put your legs up on the sofa or a chair or the bed, then do that. It really doesn't matter. The purpose of putting the legs together with a strap or letting them rest on the bed or on the chair is that the work in your legs is zero. There's effortlessness in your legs. Because if you're lying down, you might well bring your knees together like I'm doing at the moment and your feet further apart, which feels effortless. But actually you've got a little bit of lengthening down the outside of your thighs. If you then bring your feet together and your knees out, maybe you've got a stretch on the inside of your thighs. So there's work going on, even though it's passive. Whereas with the strap holding everything, I'll put you on mute, Prue, it's all right. Here we go. Brilliant. So settling yourself onto your folded up blanket. So the mid part of your back is the part of your back that's highest. You've got the top of those folded up blankets somewhere near the tip of your shoulder blades. The tops of your shoulders, your arms are resting on the floor, on your mat. Absolutely fine to have your head propped on a pillow. Absolutely fine to have your legs up on a chair, on a sofa, on a bed. Knees, legs gently strapped together, a little bit of space between your knees and your ankles. And know that it's absolutely fine to have a couple of big sighing out breaths to let the body arrive into this position. Let your body feel heavy. Know that the supports that you have underneath you are not going anywhere. And you can completely let go. As your body softens and eases and settles into that position, take your focus to your breath. Allow the breath to soften and to ease. To feel long and slow, your easy resting breath. And notice the breath in your ribs. So you feel a little bit of a movement of the ribs in all the different directions, so that the ribs move sideways when you breathe in. The front of the chest lifts and lowers a little bit as you breathe in and out. And as you breathe in, you notice some expansion across your upper back. and allowing the breath to soften a little more, slow a little bit more, and become a little deeper, like you breathe all the way down into your abdomen. Noticing the gentle rise and fall of the abdomen. Your easy resting breath. Noticing the journey of the breath from your nostrils through the back of the throat, into the ribs, all the way down to the abdomen, and all the way back out again. In your own time, and starting when you're ready to, counting your in and out breath, and adding a count of 4. So whatever your resting breath is, adding a rhythmical, almost metronome type of count to your in-breath and your out-breath. So we even out the in-breath and the out-breath. We let the breath be soft and easy, and whatever the length is, rhythmical count of 4 for your in-breath, rhythmical count of 4 for your out-breath. Know that it's absolutely fine to stay with your count at 4, breathing in for 4, breathing out for 4. It might be that the body feels soft and the breath feels easy and is happy to slow a touch further, breathing in for 6, breathing out for 6. So noticing the difference between wanting to try to bring more air into the body as you feel like you've got to make your breath last longer, compared to slowing the journey of the breath down. So same amount of breath as when you were breathing in and out for 4. You just encourage the breath to come in and out of the body a little bit slower so it takes longer and lasts for a count of 6. So perhaps you're breathing in and out for a count of 4. Perhaps you're breathing in and out for a count of 6. And notice at the end of your in-breath, there's this moment in time. It's a little pause, it's a space where there's no breath happening at all, and then the breath wants to happen. And each time you come to that little space, that pause, that gap between each breath, notice you can come into that space with softness and ease, a sense of stillness. Maybe it feels okay to be there in that space for a little bit longer. And then the breath happens. You get to the end of the next breath and you're in a space, a gap, a pause, softness, ease, and notice that it's okay to be there for a little while. And then the breath happens. So if your count for your in and your out breath is 4, then coming into that space and being in that little space for a count of 2. So you're breathing in for 4, being in that space for 2, breathing out for 4, being in the space for 2. If your in and out breath is 6, breathing in for 6, coming into that space for a count of 3, breathing out for 6 and coming into that space at the end of the out breath for a count of 3. After the next time you're in that little space, after your out breath, releasing your count in the little spaces, breathing in for 6, breathing out for 6, or breathing in for 4, breathing out for 4. And doing 3 rounds without focusing on the space between the breath before you gently ease yourself back. Super. So once you've got yourself back, take your time though. The next thing that we're going to do is legs up. Legs up the wall is great. If you have got space somewhere in your room to have your legs up the wall, it's quite different to having your legs up on a chair, because you've got the whole of the length of your legs coming down into your pelvis. So it's a different sense of weight with your legs coming down. If I just show you what the options are, you can then decide where you want to go in your room, and it doesn't matter if you come off camera, that's not a problem at all. So I just want to show you an option of having a blanket. So it's going to be in a place where the whole of the back of the pelvis and your back is on one level. It's not particularly deep, it's not really any deeper than what you've just been doing, but you can have your shoulders and your head on the floor level with your back on that. This is only an option. You don't have to do this at all. If you'd rather have your back flat, cushion under your head, do that, okay? So I'll just show you. The simplest way to get here is to lie on your side and then roll and come onto the blanket, okay? And it takes you a little moment to just work out where the blanket is to roll. So I'm going to wiggle myself to that position where the blanket again is on the point of those shoulder blades, and I can have my arms out to the side and my legs up the wall. Strapping your legs together again is effortless then for the legs. Little extra, if you want, is cushions where your arms are going to rest. So just let your hands rest on those cushions to hold your hands slightly in flexion to soften, okay? If you want your back flat, absolutely fine. If you want something under your head, absolutely fine. If, for example, you can see my feet. Other option as well is this. So twofold, you don't get any pressure on the back of your heels up the wall with the cushion there. And also then, if you've got very pale walls, if you've got grubby feet, you won't put a mark because you'll just put your feet on the cushion. So that's a bonus, okay? Or you can put socks on, and then that doesn't put any marks up on the wall. It's all right in this room because I put that paint that you can wash, and it's a colour that it doesn't show particularly. If you've got pale walls and you don't want to put your feet up, then that's the option. So the back position is incredibly similar to where you've just been in terms of your shoulder blades, your shoulders just coming over, if that's what you want to have, or back absolutely flat, legs strapped, because then once you've got your legs up in the air, you can let the weight of the legs fall into the strap out to each side, and your legs won't go anywhere. If you keep your knees and your ankles at the same distance apart that you think your ball and socket joint is, so kind of small ball, big grapefruit between your knees, between your ankles, that kind of distance is about right. And positioning yourself there. So it really doesn't matter that you jump off screen. Brilliant. So easing yourself into that position. So based on just the change of the half-hour shift with timing, just know that we might get people joining us at the moment. So there might be a little bit of disturbance. So settling yourself into this position. If you've just joined us, we're in our second posture. We're going to have legs up the wall and arms out to the side, hands resting on a cushion. Have your your legs strapped together, just so that your legs can be effortlessly in this position. Closing your eyes. It's a lovely place to notice opposites. Great place to notice opposites, particularly with your legs. Those opposites of your legs feeling so incredibly heavy, coming down and resting into the ball and socket joint. But also that lovely sense of your legs feeling so light because they're supported, they're effortless, they're up the wall. We don't have the same sense of kind of pressure into the legs when they're up the wall. So much of our day we're standing on our feet and the heart is working quite differently to pump the blood around our body, and with the legs up we're shifting how the heart works. The heart's still working, still pumping the blood around, still working against gravity, but slightly differently with the legs up in the air. Settling and easing yourself here. Make any little adjustments that you want to the position that you're in. And simply being here. Absolutely fine to return to a breathing practice if you want to. I'm not going to talk you into one. It's quite nice to do nothing, absolutely nothing at all. If it helps to count your breath, then do. Otherwise, doing absolutely nothing until you hear the sound of my voice again. Gently allow your focus to return to your physical body. Take a moment to notice where you are. Be aware of what might be around you and how you move yourself gently and carefully from the position that you're in. We're easing ourselves slowly and carefully to a comfy sitting position. Absolutely fine to sit in a chair. That's not a problem at all. If you're sitting in a chair, choose something where you can sit very upright and you don't use the support of the back of the chair, or sitting on the floor with your legs crossed. If you're not feeling like that's going to be particularly comfy, a chair will be better. The reason for avoiding, and that doesn't mean have to do, but avoiding using any kind of support in your back is because then you're quite tempted to drift off when the back is really supported and the body is becoming very soft and you head much more rapidly to sleep rather than towards a concentration technique. So I put my dot on the wall. So when I'm sitting, I've got a folded up blanket. It's quite firmly folded rather than a block because it's a bit more comfy on your bottom. Blocks are absolutely fine, but put something on top as well. So I can sit myself onto my blanket, wiggle a bit forwards, tilt my pelvis slightly, and then I'm near to, so I'm about an arm's length away. That might be a bit too close, it depends, but I've got my dot, okay, sitting there. So if you need a moment to prepare your dot, then go for it. It's a circle, perhaps the size of your thumbnail, something like that. Use a biro, use a felt tip pen, use the one that you might have had in a class with me before. Brilliant. And you could, for example, draw your dot onto a bit of paper and then fold it in half like a tent and just stand the card on something. You can prop it up on anywhere that's approximately head height, shoulder height, a little bit higher up. As long as what you're not doing is having something that's kind of on the floor in front of you so that this happens to the neck and ultimately this kind of thing happens and it changes your relationship with your breathing. So we will be here feeling quite upright, but comfortably upright and gazing ahead, okay? So that's roughly where you want to be. And that dot is your point of focus. So when we think about, so Patanjali tells us about the eight limbs of yoga. We often practice asana and pranayama, and then there's the yama and niyama, which are those sort of 10 guiding principles about the ethos, the way that we live our lives. But some of the limbs of yoga that Patanjali describes to us, one is pratyahara. So you've already been doing that loads, taking yourself away from the outside world. So stilling yourself, calming yourself, legs up the wall, focusing on your breath. You've already just put the outside world down for a little bit. That's pratyahara, withdrawing of the senses. It doesn't mean you switch them off because you can't. What it means is you're bringing yourself inwards a little bit, just letting the world out there be without attaching to anything that's going on. And then the next layer is concentration in terms of the limb. And the one after that is meditation. And Patanjali describes kind of concentration, meditation, and ultimately liberation, samadhi, as a kind of continuous flowing process, so that you're moving between the three things all of the time. And of course, as soon as you think, "Ooh, I'm meditating," you're kind of not, because you're thinking about the fact that you might be meditating. So we use different techniques. There are lots and lots of different techniques. This one might be one that you like, so we'll have a go at it. There is quite literally just a dark circle, a big dot to gaze at. So bring yourself into your comfy sitting position. You don't need to see me at all, just be able to hear what I'm saying. You come to your comfy sitting position where you can gaze at your dot, okay? So I'll just kind of mimic what it is, or mirror what it is that I'm asking you to do by being here, so you see what I mean. We're gazing at the dot. So as you gaze at the dot, you kind of soften your gaze. It's not a strong, staring, big, wide-eyed kind of gaze. It's a very, very soft, blurry gazing towards that dot. And as you soften your gaze, just take a moment to notice your sitting position. Make any of those little adjustments that you want to how you're sitting, that mean that you feel like you're sitting well and comfortably, because perhaps what happens is that the mind gets distracted by the body. So we want to be sitting comfortably, allowing all of your focus to be with your dot, so that the mind doesn't get distracted by the body, the surroundings in the room, anything else that's around you, sounds outside of your room, in the street, anywhere else. We just take every bit of focus to the dot and noticing it. Take your gaze all the way round the edge of your dot, just noticing the edges all the way round. And as we notice the dot and the edges, we make no comparison to any other shapes that we've seen before. We simply notice the edges. Then allow your gaze to be with the very middle part of that shape. And noticing the colour, noticing variations in the colour. Perhaps the eyes initially think that it's all one colour. Notice whether there are any little variations. Again, without any judgment, simply taking in the detail of what you see. And then wandering your gaze back to the very edge of your circle, softening your gaze. And noticing what happens. Taking in all of the detail. Wandering your gaze around the edge of the circle, taking in all the detail of the colour, any differences in the shading of the colour. When you've taken in all of the detail of that shape, closing your eyes and noticing what you see in your mind's eye. Allowing your focus to be with what you see in your mind's eye. Holding your focus with what you see until it completely fades away. Not being concerned about how quickly it might fade away or how slowly it might fade away. Holding your focus with what you see in your mind's eye until it fades. When it fades, opening your eyes, looking at your dot, taking in all the detail of your dot. When you've absorbed all that detail, you close your eyes again to then focus on what you see in your mind's eye. Allowing that process to continue to repeat until you hear the sound of my voice again. making the next round that you're doing your last round. So when that image in your mind's eye fades, returning yourself gently and slowly back into your room. So our final posture is relaxation. I just want to show you again the possible head support, this sort of idea of making a little nest for your head. So I've got a blanket that's been folded. This one's been folded in half and then in thirds, then not quite in half. So you've got this stepped sort of sloped part to the blanket. You're going to put your shoulders on the lower part, so they're just slightly higher up than the rest of your back. You roll a little section into your neck, okay, so your head is here. Makes it quite difficult for me to show you and have my head here, as you can imagine. But with your neck a little bit supported, tuck the sides of that top layer of blanket under, and then the other side. You can see that with the head here, it's already nestled, neck is supported. Then these top sections, you tuck them under and under, and you can see then you've got even more of a kind of little nest. So the head is held, and it stops it kind of wanting to flop about, and your neck is a little bit supported here, the back of the head resting. And if you want even more, you can tuck a little bit more with these sides, and the top of your back. Your shoulders are resting here, okay? You kind of do it lying on your back. So if you get the blanket here and you have a little roll, then I can talk you into that. Just before you settle yourselves too much, support the backs of your knees if you want to, and you've got a bolster. Support the backs of your ankles if you want to. I'll just put my ankles on this rolled up blanket. So whatever position you're lying in, whether you've got your legs up on a chair or the backs of your knees on a bolster, you can support the backs of your ankles if you want to. Don't do this if you've got your legs long down the mat, because it's going to suspend the back of your knee up from the floor. That won't be so comfy. This one really is just to have something under your knees. It's super to have it under your ankles. Absolutely the same position with this blanket under your ankles. If you've got your legs up on the sofa, the bed, the chair, that's not a bother at all. So once you settle yourself onto the floor, into your Shavasana, and you've got something under your head and you want to just think a little bit about how to fold it, you're going to roll a little bit into your neck and then tuck the sides. Don't worry about whether it's 1 or 2 layers worth of the blanket. Tuck the sides in, sort of, it's almost like you're tucking it under your ears really, to be honest. And then the top corners, tuck them under, and the other side, and you create this wonderful little nest of blanket for your head to rest in. It's really, really lovely. A little bit of a fiddle perhaps to get there, but once you've got there, it's lovely. Finding your comfy Shavasana. If you want to have your hands on a pillow, so your wrists are in a little bit of flexion, then do blanket over the top of you maybe. If your legs are up on a piece of furniture, you might strap your legs to stop them flopping about and you putting effort into holding your legs. I'm going to let you be in your relaxation position without any interference, sound of my voice. So I'll be quiet and then I'll come back in a little while. Allowing your focus now to return to yourself in the position that you're in. Just taking a moment to notice, beginning to ease yourself back. Perhaps a wiggle of fingers or toes, perhaps a yawn, a stretch, and easing back, taking your time to gently and carefully head yourself back